Hi, my name is Jessica Bayhaw, and I am one of the prevention education specialists with Great Rivers Regional System for Addiction Care. And we are continuing our This Is My Story series. And today we have Dan. Dan is in recovery and is going to tell his recovery story. So, Dan, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jessica. Oh, so I'm Dan, and I'm a person in recovery. Um, for me, it's been a life-changing event. Um, I guess I'll go into a little bit of what it was like. I grew up with loving parents, middle-class suburban household. My parents are people of faith. I have 5 sisters. 4 of them are younger, and I grew up with all of them. Occasionally my house looked a little bit more like a scene from Lord of the Flies, with that many kids running around everywhere. My parents are both adult children of alcoholics, so they lived with addiction in their lives. And it was important for them when they got married to move just far enough away from family that they could start something on their own. All my earliest memories, you'd think that everything would be hunky dory and everything would be peachy keen like all the time. There was a lot of room for love and music in the house and family dinners and everything you'd expect from a good solid family. But all I really remember being little was like this incredible sense of impending doom. It seemed like I was constantly at like the intersection of a dozen different bullet trains in my brain, just all streaming by all the time. And I remember that causing like just a lot of fear and anxiety. Um, and I just kind of lived in that depressive state for a good chunk of my childhood. Up until I figured out that I could be Batman. That was around 4 years old. I got a utility belt and a cape. And when I discovered that I could be Batman, there wasn't anything that could bother me. I was directing traffic on a New York subway station, telling people when to go, when to stay, introducing myself to people, seeing if they could figure out where the bad guys are so that I could go and help them. That was super empowering. But when I took that cape back off, it was just the scared little kid all over again. My mom had a lot of issues with depression. A lot of my early memories of her are her sleeping on the couch or sleeping in bed and hard to get out of bed. And my dad worked so hard, still to this day. He's retired and picked up another full-time job in retirement. And he'd always make it home for dinner, and then it was right back to work again. So I don't remember seeing him a lot when I was really little. Life really changed around 12 years old. I was allowed to stay at home alone and kind of keep an eye on all my little sisters. And that's when I discovered the wine in the bottom of the china cabinet, man. And for the first time, 3/4 of that bottle of wine down, I didn't feel plagued by anxiety and fear. I felt confident. I was smiling. I was happy. Everything was okay. And it was like that missing ingredient that I'd missed my entire life. And I know I was sick as a dog the next day, absolutely horrible hangover. But that was not enough to stop me. I would do that time and time again just for that little bit of reprieve from all the stuff that was going on in my head and that constant state of fear. And that's what I did. Right then it was like off to the races. Anything I could find, any way I could find it, any way I could get it, was my MO. So grades started to slide. I was, a gifted kid in gifted classes, and school didn't become a priority. I found a group of people that I really identified with. I got a mohawk, started skateboarding. The punk rock scene became my life, because there in the tiny little all ages shows, with the noise and the chaos and the violence and the drinking and the drug use, it just directly reflected what was going on in my brain all the time. And I really felt like a sympathy for the rest of those people. We became really tight and very, very self-destructive. A meager allowance on a government employee salary that my dad had was definitely not enough to keep up my habits at that point. So I took to selling some drugs, which was great, man. There were so many people that wanted drugs and I had them all. So that was like more friends and more people around all the time. And, I could sell to support my habit. So outside everything else I got into, there was a backpack full of drugs with me 24/7. And getting busted with that resulted in my first trip to rehab at 17. I have to be very grateful for the people that intervened on me at that point, because, you know, I didn't have a lot left. I was hard and fast, bottle of tequila in my locker in high school, backpack full of drugs. You know, it was necessary for somebody to put the brakes on. So I kind of, you know, over the course of 28 days inside, I managed to see that maybe this wasn't a solution. Maybe I could do something different. And I tried, you know, I got involved with the 12-step program, got a sponsor. I didn't really do anything else, you know, went to the meetings and had a sponsor. There wasn't really much work on the inside. And then all of a sudden I didn't have a bag of drugs all the time, so I wasn't worried about the cops. So it was reckless driving, sex, skateboarding in precarious situations through rush hour traffic. Everything I could do to continue that rush, only without the drugs. And I stayed clean for a year and 9 months that way. And then convinced myself that, you know, geez, it really sucks being 18 years old and clean while all my rest of my friends are getting out of high school and starting to party and starting to go to college things. And maybe it was just a phase. Maybe now I've figured out some things and learned some skills and I can get through it. So it was a slow creep back in, you know, a little bit of this on the weekends, a little bit of this after work. And it didn't take long to escalate. You know, I met a girl with a red Mustang, blonde hair and big lips, and we became, you know, fast partners in our mutual self-destruction. And man, in my 20s, I really couldn't tell you what happened in a lot of it. I was playing in bands, working as a bartender, hot girlfriend, late nights all night. You know, my regular work life was everyone else's social life. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I really needed to step up my game and keep that party running until noon the next day. And I did that for years. And both of us saw ourselves like sliding down this path of destruction. And, you know, it was one stimulant fueled dawn after a pretty long run. And I was like, hey, we should just really get married and stop this stuff. You know, and we're like, yeah, let's do that. Let's pull our stuff together. Our families couldn't be happier. Like neither of us had really been communicating, maybe around on the holidays a little bit, but usually too inebriated to like really connect with any family. So they rallied behind us, you know, like wedding gifts and wedding party. And I think for a minute, we really both believed, I believed, you know, this was the end of my childhood and I could get on to being a responsible adult. And that wasn't the case. You know, it just kept going. Only legally bound. You know, the violence got worse at home and in my regular life. You know, I started downhill sliding enough that I was even hiding things from her, and that had never been a thing before. And then she got pregnant. That was unexpected. But, you know, we'd just been married. It was our late 20s. You know, we're like, well, you know, this is the perfect time. And I was like, man, this is the thing. This is the thing that's going to do it. I'm going to be an adult now. I can leave all this stuff behind me. I'll be responsible. I have this little kid in my life. And, you know, again, like just for a minute, that was the case. I could pull it together, you know, anytime for 6 months or a year, kind of keep a roof over my head, keep the bills paid. But it never lasted, man. You know, addiction came right back in. And, you know, it was a lot of my childhood having to witness these awful things. You know, drug dealers in the house all the time, nonstop drinking and partying every evening and every weekend. Jobs were like a 2-year commitment. That's about how long I could keep those going before I needed to switch to something else because something had gone sideways. You know, eventually the marriage couldn't withstand the absolute emotional terror that we caused in each other's lives. And, you know, I think we stayed together for a number of years for the sake of my daughter. And I remember telling her, she was, I think, 12 when we split. The mom and I are getting a divorce. And the first words out of her mouth were like, oh, thank God. I don't have to listen to you guys scream at each other every morning. You know, and it didn't stop there. I thought, you know, the big fix now would be to like start a business. You know, I had my father willing to back me on a restaurant endeavor. I'd spent years in the restaurant industry. I had this amazing concept. And again, I can hold anything together for about 2 years. So I started this amazing restaurant with all these cool people and this great concept, and we did some great stuff, and we got some international acclaim and best of lists in West Virginia and in our hometown. And I couldn't hold it together. You know, I had other priorities, because every time I came back to reality for just a little bit, things hurt and I needed to run, and I didn't know how to deal with those feelings. You know, here I was pushing 40 years old, without really anything to show for it, and with this track record of causing this constant destruction. Physical dependence was very high at this point. You know, so I decided to switch everything and just go to drinking. I was like, you know, I'm like almost 40. I should be able to drink. I can leave any other substance behind me. This will be easy. I'll just do that and I'll be a responsible adult. So that turned into, you know, not being able to make it through a night without a drink. I'd need to wake up in the middle of the night and have a bottle next to me. I remember most mornings being really sick, my hands shaking so bad that I couldn't get the bottle to my face and having to put the straw down in there to get the first few shots to take the trembles away. So usually, you know, that was what woke me up, and I'd get my day started with a bottle or a 6-pack or something like that before 8 a.m. just to be able to sort of function. And, you know, that gave me this like keen, like 4-hour window where I was like mostly functional before I was too wasted to continue my day. So any work that I'd have to do, I'd need to get done before noon, because I knew what, you know, noon on turned into. And then it was just blackout, sickness, repeat it for a few years. So that business crashed and burned because of me. A lot of people lost their jobs because of me. You know, I was an embarrassment to myself. I was a worry to my family. Nobody knew how to fix the destruction I'd caused. And I absolutely had no idea what to do at that point. That 2-year thing kind of turned into a 6-month thing. I could keep things together for a couple of months, find a job, not be capable of doing it, find another job, not be capable of doing it. And then I just burned those bridges, man. Nobody was coming around anymore. Nobody wanted to see me. I wasn't the life of the party. I was that destructive force that came through, drank all your booze, and left your house a wreck. I wasn't somebody anyone wanted to see on the street anymore. They quickly crossed the street to avoid, you know, confronting me and how much I smelled, how bad I acted, my inability to keep 2 sentences together. I had a girlfriend that I moved in with at the time who drank a lot. So, you know, I used that as a crutch. She'd constantly urge me, just this week, don't drink, just this week, you know, make it through to Friday. She'd scream on a Monday morning. And I'd try, man, you know, but the withdrawals and the detox got too much after a day and a half or so. My blood pressure would spike through the roof. I'd be running fevers. I'd be shaking off the couch, leaving puddles of sweat everywhere I was. So I'd have to just sneak out and get a quick bottle, stealing her money, stealing spare change out of the take a penny, leave a penny at the convenience store to get that $4.23 I needed for that cheapest, lowest plastic bottle to get me through the day. She eventually got tired of my crap, kicked me out of the house. And I didn't see any way out, you know. Everything I touched had turned to crap for my entire life. Anytime I was left without a substance in me, I was just a scared, nervous wreck. And anytime that I needed to look at the destruction I caused, I just felt immense guilt and shame over everything. So I got a plan, man, and it gave me serenity every morning. I was like, today is the day I'm going to jump off that bridge, you know, and I'd wake up every morning with that focus. And I felt a calm, like, you know, here's an answer, here's a solution. I can stop this pain. I can stop this misery. I won't be a burden to myself or anyone else anymore. And every day I'd try to get up the nerve to do it. I'd sit there and I'd look, and it was this nice long drop to a walking trail and this stream. And I'd try to figure out, am I going for the stream or am I going for the blacktop? Well, if I go for the blacktop, then some kid might find me riding his bike, maybe over there, but I don't want to hit the water and mess this all up. And I was like, all right, in just a little bit, let's have another couple of drinks and I'll go do it. And day after day, I'd wake up, you know, after that, just knowing I'd failed at like yet another thing. I couldn't even take myself out of the equation, right? And just continue to cause more harm. That was lonely, and it was embarrassing. And there was just no other thought in my mind other than, how do I stay wrecked, and how do I accomplish this task of, suicide? There was, luckily, a friend of mine that I had partied with for a few years had found a 12-step program. He had about 3 months sober, and came to find me in this basement, face down, expecting to fight me. And he said, you're going to go get help. He brought another guy, and they were fully going to fist fight me to get me to go to treatment. But, that was like the beginning of surrender. It was the first time I just stopped fighting. I couldn't fight him. I couldn't fight my disease anymore. I couldn't fight this need and this desire to like just end it all. So I just went, I had some warm beers and I chugged them in the back of his truck on the way to the emergency room. He gave me the whole rundown. He talked to some people and he's like, go in there and you tell them that you're suicidal. They have to give you a bed if you're suicidal. I know you don't have anywhere else to stay. So I just went in, I'm like, I'm suicidal. And, through like forever in the intake process, I started just getting like sicker and sicker. When I finally got onto the unit for my first night of observation, they took my blood pressure. They were like, sir, you need to sit down. You're going to stroke out any second, because I'm just shaking, quivering mess. Kind of thank God for withdrawal meds. Those first few days in detox, I don't remember. Apparently there were 12-step meetings that came in, and I've heard some years later from some of my friends that brought those meetings in about what a mess I was. And I was like, I don't remember you. That guy that took me there came to visit me every day. He came in and was like, when you get out, I'm going to need you to come to a meeting with me. And I was like, no way, dude. Done that, doesn't work. I'm different. I'm special. That's just the blind leading the blind. What a bunch of addicts and alcoholics know. I can tell you now that the only people that really know how to get clean and stay clean are other people in recovery. And I can't do it without them on a daily basis. 12-step group brought a meeting in there. Sometime toward like my second, I had to like spend almost 2 weeks in a detox before they felt safe letting me go, before my shakes were down to a manageable level. And these guys started reading, and I was just, claustrophobic, cabin fever, angry, embarrassed, upset. And I decided to take it out on these poor guys bringing this meeting into the detox, just trying to carry a message. And I was like, how dare you come in with God? Here I am in a medical facility trying to get better, and you're walking in here shoving God down my throat every which way. And this one guy, bald head, turns to me and says, listen, man, that's how it works. If you don't like it, you're more than free to go back to shaking and sweating in your hospital bed. And I'm going to go home to my beautiful girl and my good credit score. Man, I was mad. I was fuming. And I went back to shaking and sweating in my hospital bed. And I started plotting this guy's death. When I get out of here, I'm going to find him. I'm going to find a baseball bat, take this guy out by the knees. And then it came time to leave. Finally came time to discharge. And I didn't have anywhere to go. My mom was going to take me out to dinner and kind of cut me loose. They offered me a place to stay as long as I was going to meetings. And I remembered the other thing those guys said, go to a meeting your first night out, tell them you're new and tell them you need help. And I don't know what it was, whether it was that same fear, whether something sunk in. I couldn't tell you a darn thing that I heard of in that other week and a half that I could remember in the detox. Other than go to a meeting your first night out and tell them you're new. So I went and scoped out where this meeting was, man. I was going to have a plan. I was going to have a plot. I was going to go. I was going to do the things they said, And I got there, and one of the girls that brought the meeting up in saw me in the parking lot, completely surprised and amazed that I was actually showing up to this meeting. And I was like, well, what's that about? Didn't you guys say to show up? After a few years now, taking a meeting back to that same detox, I realized most of those people don't show up when you tell them to get there. So I went in, man, and I picked up this little key tag. And I told him my name, and I got a list of phone numbers. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to get a sponsor. I'm going to get a home group. I'm going to start working steps. And then when that doesn't work after those 90 meetings in 90 days, I'm going to flip everybody off and tell them their program's crap, and I'm going to leave and go figure out something else to do. Next day, I wandered into what was my home group in 1991, 92. And there my first sponsor was sitting in the same damn chair he was sitting in 25 years before. Same look on his face. He just kind of nodded. So glad you made it back. And, you know, still nervous. I couldn't carry a whole cup of coffee to the table. I had to get like a half a cup of coffee and hold it with both hands. My shakes were still so bad at that point. That took about 2 months for that to all go away. But after the meeting, just nervous. Everyone in that meeting was half my age. Nobody was getting clean in their 40s. You know, so I didn't really know if I belonged, but I definitely remembered, you know, some muscle memory from years before, how to wipe those tables down, how to put those chairs away. So he's, you know, something to keep me occupied. He said, hey, so you punching your old home group card? And I said, yeah, why not? Let's do it. He's like, cool, we're going to need trash bags here on Tuesday. And that was a shock. Nobody had asked me to do anything for a little while. Nobody had asked me to be responsible or have any sort of mission for them, or it counted on me to really be capable of doing anything other than be the sick guy. So I took it seriously, man. And I went and checked out when the dollar store was going to be open, and I checked out how much trash bags were going to cost. I got all my spare change together. That Tuesday morning, I went in there and with most of my leftover money and bought a roll of trash bags. Took those back to the home group, like triumphantly, like, I got trash bags. And, you know, I didn't get applause for that. It was just sort of like, yeah, cool. That's what we do. We take care of our home group. You know, but that self-centered part of me, and that self-obsession really wanted me to be praised for even doing the smallest thing. But I'll tell you what, that little act of service kept me clean for 4 days. You know, that one little mission that I was given by my old sponsor kept my head in the game for 4 whole days. You know, so I went to meetings every day, at least one a day. And I got that sponsor. I found that guy that I wanted to kneecap in that meeting in my detox. And I asked him to be my sponsor because he was the one that actually told me how it was. Wasn't afraid to say the words that were going to save my life and to let me know that the choice is mine, whether or not I want to recover. You know, that's the sad fact, man. Recovery isn't for people that need it. It's for people that want it. And somehow, somewhere I got a little bit of willingness along the way. So I started going to meetings and I started working steps, and I got to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I picked up that 90-day key tag, and I went out to the parking lot and I immediately called my sponsor with tears running down my face. And I was like, what do I do now, man? I got those 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't know what to do now. And he's like, why don't you just keep coming to meetings? I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll just keep doing that. So I got involved, you know, I got plugged into my home group. As soon as I could, I started taking meetings back to that very same detox where I heard the message of recovery. And things started to get better. You know, I had to leave a 25-year career behind me, and I didn't know what to do. That same guy that took me to detox actually was a contractor, and he brought me onto his construction team. I didn't know which end of the hammer to use, really, but I could stack things and I could carry stuff. And that's what I did for like the first 10 months of recovery. I learned a little bit about how to lay tile and stack wood and use a power saw, and which end of the hammer was the right one to use. And it was cool because it was like 3 of us all in early recovery together. So every morning was spent with a little bit of daily meditation readings and talking about spiritual principles of our program, and, you know, lunch breaks or little mini meetings. And then we go to meetings together at night. And I couldn't imagine it any other way. I remember being maybe like 6 months clean and in this basement doing this demo job, scraping these tiles in the dark by myself, and remembering that I used to like own a multi-million-dollar business, and, you know, like I used to have multiple stores in a previous restaurant chain that were my responsibility, and here I am scraping tiles in the basement and crying, just like, this is what you deserve, this is all you deserve, this is where your life's gotten you. And it took a little bit of pain to find the surrender and the gratitude to be able to do that job and be proud of it. But I did, man. I started to become proud of that job. Started to become proud of the houses that we fixed and the people that we helped and the time that we spent together. The new skills I was learning. And I was like, you know what, maybe this can be it, you know, midlife transition. And at that point, everything got okay. You know, I had a mission from 8:30 to 4:30 every day. I still had time to go to meetings at night. You know, it's coming up on like a year, and I was watching these new guys come into the rooms, and they were confused and lonely and sad and ashamed and didn't know how to change people, places, and things. So helping them became my mission. You know, I'd make sure I knew these guys and they had my phone number, and I talked to them about their struggles and let them know what I had been through and how I got to where I was today. And life got better. You know, I had gratitude for my job, and I was able to help other people. At that point, my grant sponsor noticed that was like my pastime. You know, I spent every evening helping new people in the rooms. And my grant sponsor happened to work for West Virginia Sober Living and Ascension Recovery Services. He was like, hey, I see you spending all your time with the newcomers. You ever think about getting a job doing that and getting paid to do that 40 hours a week? I'm like, what? No, you know, I'm not that good. I'm not that good of a person. I couldn't possibly help other people when I was doing it the entire time, you know. And then, so I went and became a peer recovery coach, you know. And I took some classes, and I had to learn an entirely new skill set and a large amount of life-changing skills and new career opportunity in my early 40s. That was cool. That was super cool. Have somebody have that kind of faith in me that I could do something different. So I got to work around a whole bunch of people with really great recovery that were doing systematic plans to help other people in their early recovery. You know, it went from just a little bit of recovery coaching to managing a team of recovery coaches, from just acting as a clinical piece in the peer recovery puzzle to learning and executing interventions. You know, now I manage teams of recovery coaches around the state of West Virginia. I help manage what's about to turn into a half a dozen homes in West Virginia. I work with a quick response team in Monmouth County, managing all the peer operations for that. I still have clinical clients. I actively go out and do interventions for people to help families, just like mine, get their loved one back. You know, I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunities I had today. And I get to wake up every day just with that little bit of focus, you know. Today I can make a difference. Today I can be a good person. As long as I stay clean, you know, anything's possible. I have a relationship with my daughter today. She's amazing, almost 19 years old. Beautiful boyfriend, and has seen enough horrible destruction in her life that I think, you know, some of her life choices are pretty darn healthy. Life's good, man, you know, and I get to really be a part of it today for the first time. And I'm not governed by this fear and anxiety. You know, I've got some simple spiritual principles that tell me what to do next. And, you know, I just do the next right thing. I pray every morning. I meditate every morning. I read some literature. I've been with the same sponsor for a few years. I've got guys that I sponsor, one of which I met in the very same detox where I was when I was carrying a message there. Same way I met my sponsor. Life's good. And I owe it to my recovery program, my 12-step program, Ascension, West Virginia Sober Living, the community that's around me here in Morgantown, and the worldwide recovery community. You know, I can't do this, but we definitely can. And, you know, I'm sitting here living proof of that today. So I think it's about all I got to share. Thanks for letting me share, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing your story. I love what you said. I mean, you know, here you are, you've been there, you've done that, you've had your own business, and now you're able to give back. And I think that's so great that you're still being used, and you are just proof that recovery happens and recovery is possible. And so I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I apologize for the background noise. I told Dan before this started, we have 6 kids at our house right now. So, but we want to thank you, Dan, for sharing your story. And if anyone has any questions for Dan or would like to get in contact with him, please contact us at Great Rivers. We can definitely put you in contact with him, and continue to be on the lookout for more of our This Is My Story series. If you or someone you know would like to share your story of recovery, please reach out to us as well. And we look forward to many more stories of recovery. And like I said, be on the lookout for more of our This Is My Story series. Thanks, guys.